Hey everybody, I'm Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining us today on HerMoney. Mother's Day is just a few days away, so let this be your final reminder. If you haven't sent the card, if you haven't sent the flowers, you want to get on that right away. I don't know if I've shared this with all of you, but my son Jake is a very happy human being. He is living the dream. He works for a company called Wave TV that about a year ago launched a podcast called New Heights, featuring two brothers who happen to both play football in the NFL. Travis Kelce is a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jason Kelce is a center for the Philadelphia Eagles right here in my new home. The podcast was a smash hit, top of the Apple charts from the moment that it launched, and that was before Jason and Travis faced off in the Super Bowl. And today, working on New Heights occupies most of Jake's time. He handles all the social media. I've been fortunate enough to hear great stories all about it. But it makes you wonder about the story behind the story. Who raised these guys? Who, by all accounts, including my sons, are not just amazing athletes, but really great guys, brothers who started this podcast in part. They just wanted to have a reason and a dedicated time to talk to each other for a few hours a week. Who raised them to be these people? And so in celebration of Mother's Day, we are talking to the mom of these two amazing men. Donna Kelce is actually the very first mom to have two sons square off against one another in the Super Bowl. And if you're wondering where the money is in this episode of HerMoney, it is coming. Donna is also a retired banker, and so we are going to dig in. Donna, welcome to the show. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I really appreciate it.
I'd love to know a little bit about your backstory. I know you worked in banking for 4 decades, and your work also really provided a lot of inroads into housing for many low-income people. But let's go back. Let's go back a bit to growing up in Cleveland. What was your childhood like? I know it wasn't easy.
Yeah, my mother passed when I was 12, and so I had the responsibility of taking care of some things at a young age that probably not everybody has to do, but my grandparents were there, so that helped a little bit. And then my father finally remarried, and it was like Mary Poppins came into my life. So she was a great mom, teacher, a wonderful human being, and really helped my brother and I get through everything. So it was pretty cool. Was at a public school in Orange. I thought that it was important for my kids to go to a public school just because of the diversity and to try to see all different shades of life, and with religion and race and social economic abilities, you see it all in the public school system, and you make your decision early on what type of a human being you're going to be.
Your stepmother, I love the description of Mary Poppins, because we hear such things about stepmothers, often not in the best light. And I know that she really had not just an impact on raising you, but in who you were able to become in the world of sports and in getting an education. Talk about the impact that had on your life, and how that shaped you as a parent.
Right. My dad, he was a little older and was, I don't want to call him a chauvinist, but he just felt that women were to be mothers and and wives. But my mom went to school, got a college education, and she felt strongly about that, even though my dad thought that that was worthless for me to go and do. And so she kinda convinced him that that's the only way I was gonna get a college graduate husband. So that's how I ended up going, but she knew that and that both my brother and I had the ability to be able to make more and strive for greater things than just the normal, everyday, I guess, channels that parents sometimes seem to put their kids into. Little I can't even think of the right word right now, but just they have these preconceived notions of what your kids can be, and she let us dream big, and that was the most important thing.
Yeah, I think I listened to the interview that you gave on the New Heights podcast, and also did my homework and read what I could about you before we sat down to talk.
Mm,
Um, he was difficult, your dad. I mean, it was
yeah,
striking to me. He named you Donna and your
mhm,
brother Don after him.
mhm,
He clearly had lines in which he thought you were going to live.
right, right, for sure, that was definitely the case. Felt that women should not be in sports, and I fought that. I did a lot of, running, in track, and a little bit of basketball, a little bit of baseball, but I always had to do it. My mother knew where I was, and she supported it, but he kind of didn't understand what I was doing because at that point there wasn't any Title IX. It's like, why are you doing this? And it's just for the sheer joy of competing. So it was kind of rough, but I know he loved me. He tried to do as much as he could for me, and when finally it came to push came to shove, he allowed me to go to college, paid for it, and I think he warmed up to me being a businesswoman and embraced it at the end.
What do you think sports do for us as children, but
Oh,
also
uh-huh.
as grown-ups? I'm
Mhm.
I'm a very late bloomer as an athlete. I
Yeah,
was always the last picked for all the teams in
right.
middle school and
Yeah.
probably in high school
Mm,
and became a runner later in life. And I'm not going to
yeah.
win any races, but I've finished a number of them, and that feels really good.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that if you compete against yourself in whatever you do, any sport, music, art, ballet, dance, whatever you can do, you need to be able to push yourself and to go to extremes that you never thought you could so that you can find out who you really are. I just think it's so important to bring in sports or music or dance or something, whatever your child feels that they need to or that they want to do in life, give them a shot at it if you can financially and see if they can get better. I know it's hard for a lot of kids to sit on the bench or to not play or whatever, but it's so important that the parents do not drive that, that the kids themselves go up to the coach and say, "What do I have to do to get better? What do I have to do in order to play more?" And it has to be driven by them. And I think if you join a team, you have to finish out the season because they depend on you. But sometimes it's better to get into a different league or a different coach or whatever because not always do the personalities match when you're matched up with a coach. So try something different, try another sport. There's lots out there right now that wasn't available 30 years ago. So it's a wonderful thing, and there's a lot of things out there. Just support your child in whatever they show an interest in, and, you can't go wrong because that's what they'll love to do, and they'll get better at it.
Two key parenting lessons that you hit on in that last answer, and I want to dig into them just a little bit because I think that they
Mhm.
were very important when it came to raising your boys. But I've got a boy and a girl, and I think they're just universal lessons. We live in this era of helicopter parenting
Yeah.
where there are parents who think it's okay to pick up the phone and call a teacher or call a child's employer or insert themselves in the equation to make things, to make an uncomfortable situation better for a child.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly do not believe that.
No.
Where'd that come from in you, and how did you get yourself to stick to your guns when the boys were benched?
I think it was just when they started hockey, that was the most difficult because they didn't have the skating skills that a lot of the other kids had because they started a little bit later than most of them. So maybe they didn't get as much ice time, and it was sheerly because they just couldn't get to the puck or whatever. And or in soccer, there were a lot of kids that were much better at soccer than they were because they started maybe a little later than they did. And it's just you by watching what was happening and what the other parents were doing and interacting with the coach and seeing how the coach was reacting to it and what would happen the next week, which was usually they didn't play the kids at all. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that are out there that are very arrogant and very, it's going to be my way or the highway. And sometimes that's just the way it is. And I try to instill in my children to find out, not insincerely, but how do you um, build a network of people that find you valuable? In other words, you need to find out what is important to that coach. Is it to be on time? Is it to be the first one there? Is it picking up the bats afterwards? Whatever you need to do, give that extra effort that nobody else is giving. That's what will endear you to them, and they will play you. They will make sure that you get in. And if you're the one that's doing those things and making the extra effort, it will eventually happen.
And if that person is not a coach but an employer, these are the kind of things that are going to get you
Yes.
mentored and sponsored
Yeah.
and
hmm
promoted.
Most CEOs in this country are C students, but they have a wonderful ability to be able to relate to people. And if you can be a good person and have a great personality, not everybody can have that, but and be able to relate to people, you've got it made in business. You really do.
The other thing that you said that you did not allow was uh, your kids to quit in the middle of a season. And I
Right.
think that is equally important. At at what point did you make that decision, and
hmm
why do you think it's such a key message?
Well, there was one particular instance where we were on a baseball team, and there was another child whose father was the coach. And that particular father um, would listen to his son, and his son would tell my son that he was the reason why we lost every single time. And that wasn't the case. It's a team sport, but every game he was crying. And I said, it's terrible to see your children crying after every single game, but I said, we have to stick it out. You signed up for the season. This is important to get through. And then next season, when you choose to go to another team or whatever, you can do that. But right now, this is the decision you made. This is the team that you're on, and you have to make the best of it at this point.
Was it Travis or Jason?
It was Travis. Yeah.
Did he fight you on it?
Not really. He understood because we told them at the beginning of every single season, no matter what sport they were playing, this is for the duration. You cannot change or move. And so it worked out okay.
Another thing that I know you've had to deal with, simply because your kids played so many sports growing up and have continued to, is
hmm
disappointment and helping them deal with disappointment. Jason has talked about the fact that he didn't get a scholarship to play at a D1 school coming out of high school. But I'm sure that's just one of so many instances. How did you help them through that?
Yeah. It is a difficult conversation, but I asked him, I said, "Do you think you can play with these kids?" Because he was on an East-West team. He played against some of the kids in his state. He was asked to go to those showcases. And I asked his coaches, first of all, if he was good enough, and everybody said yes. And so I asked him, I said, "Do you believe that you can play against this caliber of individual?" And he says, "Yes, I know, Mom, absolutely." I said, "Okay, find a college within the state, and I will pay your tuition this year, and hopefully you can win a scholarship in a year." And that's exactly what he did. So I think a lot of it is believing in the ability of your children. You do have to do your homework. You do have to ask other people that are in the know, that have been with other children, and to be able to um, identify if they can compete at that higher level. And and if they agree with you, then I think it's a good, it's basically you're gambling on your kid that they're going to be able to
Which
do it. But
is always a good gamble, I think, right? Or much of the
yes,
time, if you believe that they
yes.
can do it. But when they're down, right
Hmm.
after the Super Bowl, when Jason was down, after
Yeah.
this scholarship in the first year didn't come through, after a particularly difficult loss, whether it was earlier in their life or during their
Uh-huh.
NFL season,
Mhm.
how do you help them get out of bed the next day?
Oh, wow. I don't think I ever really had to say anything except you did everything you could. You tried your hardest. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no walk of shame when you lose. It's just learn from it. Learn whatever you can. Learn that maybe you have a skill that needs to be honed a little better. Maybe you need to practice a little more. But on a team sport, it's not just you, it's everybody. They were on a high school team where they didn't win a lot of games. So, no matter what the sport. So, they weren't state champions. They might have been the best child on their team and the best maybe in their neighborhood. But did that relate to the state and national? You just never really know until you start getting the letters that come in that say that we want your child to come to this college and that college, and they have to need your skills too. A lot of it is luck. It has nothing to do with you having the ability. It's, do they need your position on their team, or do they have somebody already? So you just have to keep looking and trying for the best shot that you can. So
Resilience, yeah.
yeah, and
Somebody at one point.
flexibility. Yeah, resilience, flexibility. Both of them did not end up playing what they went into college with. Jason was a linebacker for defense. They moved him to center because that's what they needed. And Travis was a quarterback. They didn't need a quarterback, they had enough of them. So they asked him to be tight end. And you have to be able to make that decision and go with it and trust in the people that are above you that know what your skill set is, and hopefully that'll work. But there is a lot of luck involved. There's the being at the right place at the right time with the right coach. University of Cincinnati was never a football team, but they just happened to be there at the 5 or 6 years with Brian Kelly and Butch Jones and Rick D'Antonio, so that they were able to build unreal teams and go to bowl games and everything else. A lot of talent on those teams.
But so important too. This is what happens in companies, in
Hmm.
businesses across the
Yeah,
country all the time.
yeah,
It's happened at HerMoney, right? We had one
right.
employee leave. We needed somebody else to step in and produce this podcast. And my colleague Catherine had never done it before, but she
Hmm.
stepped in and she said, "I'll do it." We looked at who we had, and
Hmm.
she was flexible enough to roll with it. And sometimes I think you're right, other people see skills in you that you don't
Hmm.
see in yourself, and you have to
Right.
listen to that.
Yeah, that's true. Not only that, but there's growth. You get comfortable with the day in and day out of what you're doing every single day. And if you can just stretch a little bit and move into different areas, a whole different world opens up for you. So I agree with that.
I want to dig into some of the topics that we talk about on this show all the time: money and how you handle it when a lot of
Right.
it comes your way at once. Also,
Mm-hmm.
navigating through divorce. I've been there. I know you've been there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to take a very quick break.
Sure.
And we are back with Donna Kelce, proud mom of two Super Bowl stars, Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce, also stars of the New Heights podcast. According to a working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research, 16% of NFL players have filed for bankruptcy within 12 years of retiring. A Sports Illustrated article reports that 78% of NFL players and 60% of NBA players, so we're not blaming it all on football, face serious financial hardships after retirement. Since this is a money show and you spent 40 years in finance, I got to ask, what happens? What do you think it is
Mm-hmm.
that happens?
Mm-hmm. I think it's more money than they've ever seen, and they think it's going to last forever. They get this huge paycheck and they don't realize what things cost at the level they want to live, which is houses, cars. I mean, you only need one car, you only need one place to live, and you really only need one piece of jewelry. But they insist on just everything. And I know Travis, my youngest, he almost went bankrupt his first year after I told him, put a third of it away, spend a third, and then invest the other third. And he just didn't get that. He was just having too much fun. But he got it together. He was very fortunate of getting some endorsements and things like that, but they live on a paycheck and they get paid per game. And once the games are over, they don't get paid anymore unless they have endorsements or they're lucky enough to get commercials or whatever or other outside endeavors. And they just don't understand the value of money. They don't understand the difference between needs and wants. And there's nothing wrong with buying the nicest car that's out there. But it's just, I think that one of the biggest problems is a lot of athletes come from very, very large families and they want
Mm.
to give to their mothers, their aunts, their cousins, their friends. They just are very, very grateful of where they are. They want to invest in their friends' bar. They want to do this. So a lot of it is outside of them. It's not so much them. I think there was one particular football player that had 80 people on his payroll, $100,000 a year he would give to his friends, family, and relatives. So that's a lot of it. Uh,
Yeah.
their their family is so devastated that they feel they have to support everyone. And so that's the biggest issue is being able to give permission to say no.
How have you done that for your boys? I mean, I did a little internet research. It looks like
Mhm.
both have earned upwards of $60 million from the
Mhm.
NFL. How have
Yeah.
you shielded them and their futures
Yeah.
um, from this sort of failure?
Yeah, I can tell you this. I have told them about the one third, one third, one third forever. But I have to admit that the NFL has really better advisors than I could ever be. All right. They have fantastic financial advisors. And that's all I did was tell them get a good financial advisor. Find somebody that can invest your money. Unless you've got a degree in investing, I would not do it yourself. They know what to do, they know what to look for, and it's word of mouth, really. But you do need to have somebody that's there paying attention to what you're doing and how much you're spending to say, hey, look, knock it off, or you're getting close to your limits right now. But you have to have a
The
budget.
the one third, one third, one third, is that how you lived your life? Is that,
I
are
w-
those sort of the tenets that you paid attention to?
Well, probably later on in life. When you start out early in life, you don't live like that. You live and you spend what you make, and that's just the way it is because you don't have the luxury. Renting is very expensive, and it's used to be 130% of your income. It's not anymore. It's way over half of your income goes to housing. And so it's difficult, especially when you throw kids in there, to be able to make ends meet. And it's just hard. And sports, I mean, having boys that are interested in sports is difficult. The expense of equipment, I swear I have a plaque that's at Dick's with my name on it. But but every kind, why can't they all wear the same cleats? No, they have to have baseball cleats, they have to have soccer cleats, they have to have football cleats. So it's putting them in the, like when Travis decided to stop playing hockey, I was so thrilled. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have to buy the pads and the skates." I mean, skates are like $200-300, and I'm like, I don't have to do that anymore. I'm like, "Go out and buy the most expensive pair of Jordans you can find," because it was still cheaper than what I had to put on Jason every year for hockey.
You described your life with the kids when they were playing all these sports,
Oh,
that
yeah,
you
it's
and your
expensive.
ex-husband Ed tag teamed it.
Yeah,
That you would divide and conquer. One would take
right.
Travis, one would take Jason. You'd go to all these
Mhm.
sports that were so far flung from your home in
Right,
Cleveland.
right.
Did that amount of parenting take a toll on your marriage?
I would say maybe it did, but sometimes you just grow apart. Somebody becomes a different person over time, grows a little bit more than the other one does, and I think that once your kids are the ones that are holding you together, the glue that are holding you together, and once the children are out of the house, you're just like, okay, that was the whole thing, and maybe there wasn't anything else." So, but it was worth it for both of us. We're friends now. We're just two different people, and my career took off, and I grew very quickly over the years, and I was just a different person than I was when I married him. That's all there is to it.
Listening to you, I think I tell very much the same story. I was married for, you were married for 24, 25 years. I was married for
Mhm.
17 the first time. And sometimes our careers do take us in places where we didn't expect them to take us, and change
Mhm.
us in ways we didn't expect to change. But by all accounts, you and Ed have a very good divorce.
Yeah.
What's the secret to that?
I think you just have to pick your battles, number 1. It's it and I just go, and wherever he is, he's usually with my children. So I focus on them and just have the best time that I can possibly have, because we don't have very many opportunities where we're all together at the same time, and I don't wanna mess it up. So I might zip my lip a little bit more. I might not make any comments about old issues and things like that. We both know each other very, very well, and we just try and overlook things the best that we can and move forward, because we know that if we don't, somebody's not coming to Thanksgiving next year, and I don't want that to happen.
That is very, very sage advice. Bef- Before I'm just taking it all in, Donna, because I think that is like the best advice.
Yeah.
Um, we got to talk about the game. We got to talk
Yeah.
about the game and what
Sure.
happened after. Everybody, I think, knows that Jason and Travis had a pretty serious sibling rivalry growing up.
Oh,
It
yeah.
seems to have, oh yeah, it seems to have maybe mellowed a little bit. I listen to them giving each other a little bit of ripping on New Heights, but
Mhm.
uh, how? How did you handle going into to the Super Bowl and being Switzerland in your jersey that was half Chiefs and half Eagles?
Yeah, well, that started a long time ago. Because they play in different conferences, it didn't happen all of a sudden. They only play each other every 4 years. So the first time it was with Philadelphia, and Travis wasn't playing that year because he had a knee injury. So his first year, he didn't play a lot. So that time, he was just there, but he wasn't playing. The next 4 years was in Kansas City. They go back and forth between who's going to be playing where. And that time, Travis had a jersey made for me, which was Chiefs on the front, Eagles on the back. And so I wore it then. And Jason was a little ticked off when he saw me coming towards him because all he could see was the 87 on the front, and I had to quickly turn around. He's like, well, at least the name's on the right number. So so that was funny. But anyway, sorry. But it was just that. So then they played each other again. It was back in Philadelphia. So I wore the jersey. And then this past year, or not this year, but I think the year before, they played at the Chiefs again. And so that was, I wore it again. So I've got to wear it a lot of times. Surprisingly, I could wear it at the actual Super Bowl, and they're playing each other this coming season because the AFC winner and the NFC winner play each other. So they get to play each other again. So I get to wear it one more time. My jersey right now is in the Hall of Fame, but it's on loan, and I told them I need it in September. So I said, get it back to me by then, and you can have it for a while.
How did you handle the fact that they were competing against each other as children, but also in the biggest stage on earth?
Yeah, it was more of the same. It was every day was a competition between the two of them. If it wasn't running to the table to see who could get there first, who could get in the shotgun in the car in the front seat, who could get upstairs and take their shower first, who was in the pool the first at a hotel, which bed they were going to sleep in. It just was never ending. They constantly competed against each other with cards or chores or anything. They always had to get done faster, quicker, better. And Travis was always, because he was 2 years younger, was always trying to catch up to his brother. And he finally did when he ended up being a little bit taller than him. When he became a sophomore, he was taller than Jason was at a senior. So that's when they stopped fighting. It was equal. They were equal to each other at that point.
A lot of families have these sibling rivalries that
Hmm.
just go on well
Yeah.
into adulthood. You managed to raise two men who clearly love each other.
Hmm.
How did you do
They
that?
do. Yeah. I think that's all they had was each other. There are no cousins. My brother and Ed's sister had no children, and my father was an only child, and my mother was an only child, so I had no cousins. And it's like when your brother is your only family besides your parents, you're with them constantly no matter what, on vacations and everything else. There's nobody else around, so you have to play with them. You have to get along with them. They both know each other's faults, no doubt about it, and they know each other very, very well, and they'll bring stuff up, but they can say things about their brother, but no one else can. And Jason always came to Travis's defense at school if he had trouble or anything, and that's what a big brother is supposed to do. Watch out for Trav. It's things like that you tell your kids. You will be the only ones alive after your parents are gone, so it's going to be your only family. So be close, stay close.
My father, he called it rule number 537. You are all each other has, and so you
Yeah.
better really, really respect that.
Yeah.
This has been such an incredible year for you. I mean, in many
Mhm.
ways, I think you have been America's mother. So, as America's mother on Mother's Day, what's
Mhm.
your number one piece of parenting advice? What's the nugget that you want all of our listeners to take away?
I think it's just be there. If your kid is in a play, if they're playing a saxophone, if they're in a god awful track meet, which goes on all day and they're only in one category or one, you know, s- race or anything like that, you just have to show up. As much as you hate it, as much as you hate listening to the middle school band, as much as you hate seeing that play, you have to be there for them because that shows your child that you value them more than anything else, more than your time. And it resonates with them, trust me. Just be there for your child.
Donna Kelce, happy Mother's Day to you. Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Sure, sure, no problem. Thanks a lot, Jean.